Greetings, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Better Than Yesterday. You cannot live two lives, nor can you uphold two identities. Now, at face value, this is something that sounds very obvious. But once you take a couple more seconds to think about it, I'm sure that you can think of an example where you met someone who was two-faced. Perhaps when you first met them, they behaved a certain way, but behind your back, they were a completely different person. Maybe when they were hanging with one group of people or one group of friends, they had a certain set of characteristics and behaved a certain way. But when they were with another group of people, they behaved in a completely different manner. Now, this is something that is easy to point out in other people because it's not a very desirable trait. But in ourselves, this is something that, if we are living this sort of lifestyle, you're already lying to yourself and to others. And if you are living this way, then you're not going to likely want to admit it to yourself because you've already been telling yourself this lie. So this is exactly the pitfall that I want to warn against in today's video. And simply because I can actually relate, and I hope that someone listening as well can relate, because if I go back roughly about 2 years ago, I was actually doing this exact thing. Living two different lives, trying to uphold two different identities at the same time. And it's only going to work for so long. But there's something that I noticed. If you grew up in a strict or maybe a structured manner, let's say you grew up in quite a religious, maybe Christian home with very strict parents, I think that you are more prone to actually fall into this kind of trap because you have this pressure on your parents that it sort of pushes you to live a certain way. And that way is perhaps, some examples is, always listening to those who are above you, always respecting your elders, not breaking the rules. That sort of lifestyle is something that was maybe pressured onto you from a young age. And this is something that I could say for myself for sure. I was always, taught to live that sort of lifestyle. I was brought up, in a very Christian home, which I'm very grateful for. But it definitely pushed me towards living that sort of lifestyle. And I became that sort of poster boy, Christian, and I became a youth leader at church from a very young age. I was always attending church, and I definitely fit that role very well for many years growing up. I always listened to those above me. I was very respectful, didn't break the rules. I was very well behaved, very polite. I knew how to, work my way into different situations through sweet talking and so on. So, I had that identity down pat. But when I finished school, you get presented with this other lifestyle, And when you finish school, there's a million different lifestyles that you could pursue, But that was the one that I was sort of that I had grown up into, And I'm sure that anyone who grew up with a similar sort of lifestyle and perhaps was pressured into a similar thing, your parents, maybe they weren't religious, but they were very strict and sort of pressured you into living a certain way, and you had to study after school and be a doctor or whatever it is, this sort of strict pressure from an early age. Eventually you're going to want to rebel against that at some point, and some people go through that a lot earlier. But for me, when I finished school, I realized that there was another way to live your life, and this was basically, for me, the lifestyle that had sort of attracted me at the time was that of hedonism, And if you don't know what hedonism means, it's basically the pursuit of pleasure. So anything that provides you with pleasure, you're going to pursue it. And that's sort of the lifestyle that I think a lot of people, young people, lead. And I'm sure you've seen it around you, going to parties every weekend, drinking, smoking, hooking up, all of these things that we see in our culture around us. It's, for young people, it's pretty much the most popular, I would say, or like presented lifestyle. It's something that a lot of young people do, and it's almost normal for young people. That's like, you're young, that's how you should live your life. And it can seem very attractive. And for me, I definitely fell into that trap of being attracted to that lifestyle and also wanting to delve into it. And so I did for a while, I started going to all the parties. To be fair, I never fell into drinking that much, but I picked up smoking for quite a while. And, these are habits that don't just go away immediately, and you start to fall into that lifestyle. But at the same time, this is where it gets interesting, and this is why I thought this might be an interesting discussion for us to have, is because at the same time I was a youth leader at my church. I was leading. I was still that poster boy Christian, and this really good innocent boy. But then at the same time, I was trying to lead this other lifestyle and this other identity, where I was going to parties and was fulfilling that lifestyle, pursuing pleasure the whole time, and hookups and whatever it is, that sort of lifestyle and everything that comes with that. So yeah, to be very honest, for a while I try to uphold these two things, and I think there always comes a break point with this kind of thing, and that's simply where those two lives overlap. So for me, it was literally on one night something quite funny and just crazy, where I literally went from church straight to the club. And when that kind of happens, you sit down afterwards and you got to be honest with yourself and be like, who am I? If 2 hours ago I'm living this and I'm looking like this type of person, and then literally I hop in my car and go to the club and I'm living a completely different lifestyle, hanging with a completely different group of people, and you have to behave a certain way to fit in with both groups. You can't behave the same way that you do with everyone at church that you do at a nightclub, and that's just normal. And so that was definitely the breaking point for me. And it doesn't always perhaps look exactly like that, but you might be living two different lifestyles and having these two identities. Perhaps when you are with one group of friends and there's one thing that you like to do, whether it's it doesn't have to be church, but it can just be a certain group of people. Maybe when you're with your family even, you behave a certain way, but then when you are with your friends, you're out doing something completely different that you wouldn't know. You wouldn't want either two groups to actually know what you're doing, because if you told these people, you'd be embarrassed about what you do on this side, and if you told these people, you'd be embarrassed about what you do on that side. And eventually you're going to hit a point where you realize that these two identities can't coincide, and that you have actually become two-faced, which is never something that you want to see in yourself. And at this point, if you've realized this, and if this is something you can relate to, you just need to be self-aware and actually admit it. That's the first step to actually moving past this. Is like I mentioned earlier on in the video, is that we tend to lie to ourselves, and the hardest part is actually admitting that I am actually leading two different lifestyles and I am actually being quite fake in this scenario. Because for me, it was literally that thing of going from the church and leading there, and then straight afterwards going to a nightclub, and everything that goes on in a dingy nightclub, here in Cape Town. And it just wasn't, I woke up the next morning and I was like, this just does not work. I cannot be living these two different lifestyles. I felt fake, on the inside. I could literally feel that I was, not being consistent with others, and in so doing, I was not being consistent or honest with myself. And I hope that you can do the same and come to a point where you realize, you can't be leading these two different lifestyles at the same time. So the first point is to admit it. Become self-aware. Admit that you have become two-faced, and that you are actually deceiving one side and deceiving one group of people every time that you go out and behave a completely different way and become a completely different person when you are in a different scenario, or maybe with a different group of people. So accept it, and then the next step is to actually do something about it. Now you need to take the time to actually map out who it is exactly you want to be. And this was something that was quite big for me in this moment, because I realized I had to be honest with myself and sit and write it down and be like, who do I actually want to be? Do I want to be this good Christian boy, man, young man? Is that the type of man that I want to be? Someone who attends church, someone who, behaves this way? Or do I want to be someone who pursues pleasure? Do I want to be someone who, who goes out, who drinks and smokes and parties, and, and there's a lot of good times and fun that you can have in that as well. But I, for myself, had to make the decision, because I realized that I couldn't be doing both of these at the same time. They just didn't coincide. And I'm sure that, if if you have two different groups of friends that like to do two different things, there's nothing wrong with that. But this is more an issue when the two different lifestyles or identities that you have don't coincide with each other. You can't be, a leader at church, for example, and then be going to the club and doing, hooking up with girls or other people, and getting drunk, and it just doesn't align. And in your scenario, it might be two different things, but if those things don't align, then you have to choose between one or the other, and then cut out the one side of yourself, or rather just start to act in a consistent manner, wherever you are, because you can do different activities and you can enjoy yourself in different ways, but you just need to become consistent and honest with yourself about who you are. And once you've done that process of writing it down, you will understand yourself a lot better, and you'll understand that no matter who you're with, you should be the exact same type of person, and you shouldn't be fake and two-faced. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we never like to see that in other people. So we wouldn't want to be doing that to other people ourselves, by behaving completely different depending on what scenario we're in. So yeah, this was something that sort of took a bit of open and being very open and honest for myself. We don't often delve into our personal lives here on Better Than Yesterday, but yeah, this is something that I went through, and I thought that it could be of value to you guys who are listening, who you might be able to relate of that idea. And like I said, perhaps if you grew up in a very strict and structured home, and then you get presented with what it's like to live life slightly differently, you can try and sort of uphold, maybe for your parents or whoever sort of pressured you into living one sort of lifestyle, you can uphold a certain persona, and then but when you're out with friends or you aren't around those people anymore, then you are a completely different person. So I'm sure that this is something that hopefully a few of you guys can relate to. And if you can, let me know in the comments what it is for you, and perhaps if this video spoke to you in any type of way, please do let me know in the comments, and I'd love to have more of a conversation with you guys as well, and find out how you guys have dealt with that as well. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Better Than Yesterday. Hope you did enjoy it. Please do give us feedback on what you thought of this more open and honest style conversation, and what you guys think about hearing more of our story. But if you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to this channel. And Daniel and I have to sincerely apologize for the fact that we haven't uploaded for the last couple of weeks, but we were both writing our final exams for the year with university, but now we're done, and I am done. I'm very glad to be finished and excited to start making a lot more content for Better Than Yesterday. So if you are keen to stick around for that, then we'll see you in the next one. But sending much love from Better Than Yesterday.